I want to send our thoughts and prayers to the UVA community, to the family and friends of the victims, and just I think all of our hearts are heavy today. So just before we get started.
Coach, you, I mean, the third down defense was a little bit of an issue earlier in the year at a couple of moments, but the way you guys have played these last few weeks, I'm assuming you just haven't become a better third down play caller. What are the guys doing so well in those situations?
You know, I think even early in the year we were doing better. I mean, it started last year because we could rush the passer better. We got simplified in coverage, and then going into this year, you know, the first couple of games we played really well on third down, and then just going to that weight game, it was things that I saw the issues. There weren't these great searches of let's come up with these answers. I mean, whether it was execution, whether it was a matchup, it was like, okay, we just got to do this for that team. And so, my job is to create structure and some standards and some plans and then to teach it, and then the guys go out and execute. We've just done a really good job, and it helps that we have good players because they can win one-on-ones. You just got to make sure they're in the right one-on-ones.
We saw the video, the smile on your face. I guess, what did breaking the rock mean to you? And maybe more than the act. I mean, what your defense has done now 2 weeks in a row, not allowing a touchdown.
Yeah, well, I mean, grateful to Coach Norvell to allow him for me to do it. But I'm just up there as a representative for the defense and a representative for the team. Anytime we break the rock, we've won the game. So let's start there, and that is the goal, to win the football game. And then within winning the football game, we want to go play our best. And so those are all things that go along with it. But to have the opportunity to do it, been with Coach Norvell now for 4 seasons, and it's a great tradition. Our guys get behind it, and just it's always great energy in that locker room after a win.
Turnover, defense comes out, 3 straight negative plays. Just how impressed were you with them dictating terms as they did?
Yeah, it was critical. I mean, I think it was it a 14-3 game at that point? And, they're in field goal range. And so, they came out and 10 personnel and try and throw a quick screen to their best player. And we've got 2 guys right there, and that's a 2-yard loss. And then, Josh Farmer, who had the same rep in practice, and Odell did a great job of coaching him on his footwork because it wasn't clean. And he was picture perfect in, how he played it, his reaction to it. And that's a 4-yard loss, and then they come out and empty, and we get really good coverage, and Jared wins a one-on-one, and Kalen adds in, and next thing you know, it's a lot further from where they started. And but that's our job. So, Akeem's really, he's somebody I trust and somebody we put the work into, and he's come a long way in this program, and I know we'll get his best here coming in this week. Shai, he's been. I knew he had the tools, and it just goes to show these guys get recruited, and that DB class, he came in with 2 DBs that started as true freshmen. He did not, and now he's playing as good as all of them. And it goes to show that not everybody's timeline is the same, but if you have the right attitude, the right effort, and you show up every day and you work at it, that success will follow. And Shai's seen that. We made a commitment to make him our dime safety, so he was guaranteed to get reps. Range, good man-to-man defender, good tackler. He's what we look for in a safety.
JP talked last week. I think the Miami game, he kind of was starting series where he would just kind of alternate between, I think it was Jared and D-Mac, and then the next series would be Pat and Leonard, and kind of do some. The Jared injury obviously was tough at the time, but what did that do in the long run for the depth of that unit? It feels like the depth there is definitely closer to the rest of the defense compared to where it was at the start of the season.
Yeah. There's no replacement for game reps, but game reps have to come and they need to be earned. So you develop the trust, you develop the confidence, you develop the swagger to be put in the game through practice work, through training. Then when you get the opportunity, you got to run with it. And I think we're seeing that. We're seeing it with Leonard Warner. We definitely see it with Pat Payton. Same with Josh Farmer. Just talking about the guys up front. Shaheem Brown, Zaire Thomas. There's a lot of people, and it's part of it. I mean, you look at Josh Farmer's first game against Louisville. It's light years different than what you're seeing now. And but he was forced into action because of injuries. And a good football program is like a good defensive call. You work on it constantly. You marinate it. You keep poking at it. You keep finding the problems. You keep fixing it, and then all of a sudden when you use it, it's ready. It's not on-the-job training. But sometimes, opportunity comes before, and then that's when you got to react, and you need some on-the-job training. But we've had the ability on defense to, evaluate well, recruit, and then come in here and develop. And some guys have developed faster than others. Some guys have been forced into action faster than others. But once you can get that system in place and then continue to evaluate well, then that's how you build a program.
Actually, I have two questions, but I was going to ask them separately. The first one
problem by me.
is Steven says it's fine. The first one is kind of similar to the question Chris asked earlier about the sudden change, but not a lot of teams win the toss and take the ball. What are the guys? What's the guy's mindset when that happens and they know that it's kind of almost like being challenged a little bit? How were they at that moment? They obviously did well.
Game on. I can have conversations with them on the sideline, about what did you see, instead of saying this is what it is. And, just the growth with, like Kalen DeLoach. I mean, we've come a long way with him. And, as frantic as the sideline can be on game day sometimes, there's some calmness and confidence to it at this point. Doesn't mean it's always going to be clean and perfect, but, we can get back to home base really quick. Up front, it's just, we've had winters now, we've had training, we've had practice, and you could say, hey, you could just paint the picture for them. It happens a lot more consistent now because we have a defensive system in place. Our players understand it. They understand the expectations. They know that every time there's success doesn't mean it was right, and every time there's failure, they don't mean it was wrong. And they're open-minded to that, and they'll let you coach them. I think up front, I think the game reps and the practice reps have really come on to help Jared Verse. I think he's playing a lot more fundamentally sound right now, which allows his tools to take over. Derek McClendon, he's been playing for a long time for us. His role is just continue to get more and more as he's improved. Leonard Warner's started at 3 different positions in our defense and has played good reps. Patrick has kind of come on through fire. I'm just going through the defensive ends because you start out here in Jermaine. And then Dennis Briggs can play all 4 spots on the defensive line. That only happens because we have continuity, we have consistency, and we have good, clean coaching. We have really good coaches, and those guys work really hard to work with their kids. And so I'm just looking forward to getting back to work this week.
Statistically, this defense right now is top 15 in the nation in yards allowed, points allowed. You obviously want to get better. I get it. And I'm not saying you mail it in, but do you look at how this team is constructed in the current time and think, man, we are maximizing what we are? I'm not saying like you take it easy on the guys, but can you really keep putting the screws to guys when you're playing this high and kind of realize what you have talent-wise and what you're hitting potentially?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we all want numbers next to our names and units. But at the end of the day, if that's what defines you, you're pretty shallow. There's a lot left out there for us to accomplish. I mean, where I get excited is when I sit on the plane coming home from Syracuse and I watch the first 5 plays and I'm looking at anybody that's up on the plane so I can show them how proud I am of how clean it looks. I mean, that's where I get excited. I mean, if that happens to be that we have 8 3-and-outs and a takeaway, 9 quality stops, great. That's all. And usually that is connected. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not in for moral victories. Hey, we played clean football, but we lost. Like that, I'm not into that. But I also understand that whatever the numbers are, like, I trust what I see with my eyes. And that's not only with training, but I knew we were ready. I mean, Friday, we practiced as fast as I've seen us practice. I mean, we were chasing balls down from the backside. We were running to a point that I was like almost cautious on, how those plays were going to finish because of the speed they were running at. And so you see it building. I mean, very rarely in my career have I looked out there and been surprised with how this is going. Usually the answers are right in front of you. You just got to be smart enough to look at them. And, our guys train hard. They like each other. They play hard with each other. Now they're having some success. And at the end of the day, when you have success, it's good to redirect that and find out why. It's probably because of the work. It's probably because you've been able to share the successes by really seeing it's probably because of the other people, not just because of you. And then when you don't have success, then that's when you accept the responsibility. You know, and I think we've had the opportunity to teach in both those avenues. And but it does feel good to have some success, but at no point do you feel like, oh, great, yay. Like, all I know is we got a Monday, like, and that's kind of where your mind goes. And that'll lead to a Tuesday. And, you know, if we keep preparing the way we've been and then just keep cranking the dial a little bit higher, like our dial, there really shouldn't be like 100 point at the end of it. It just keeps going, you know, because when you get to the end, what do you do? You know, there is no end to it. It's a continuous cycle of improvement. And the minute you think you've arrived, you're probably back down to zero. And so if you're not built like that, then you better read a book or find a way, because that's how this thing works.
Not trying to look ahead to Florida, but when you're watching Louisiana, how much will that week help you, this week help you for next week? Because I know it's a different coaching staff now, but it's a lot of the players that Billy Napier recruited. So how much does that help to look at, you know, for this game to help for next week as well?
I think every week helps you for the next week. You know, I really believe that, you know, and I think you're going to do things on defense one week so that the next week they work on it and you won't do it. You're going to do things on defense so they see it one way and it's going to be different. You're going to do some things every week on defense because that's what you're really good at. And so if all those things help us win this week and next week, then so be it. But, you know, there are probably connections between the two programs because of how the whole thing's played out. But, you know, right now, like, I'm just trying to make sure we have a good Monday. Thanks, guys. Good job.